And this is the heart of Paul's experience of being loved by God in Jesus. To be strengthened, Paul says, in our inner being by the power of God's Spirit. This is not something you can get at by deduction. It is pure gift. Whether you know it or not, you are loved infinitely, immutably, and unconditionally. God didn't ask your permission to love you. He just does. To be filled with the Spirit is the same as to live in this love. So Paul said to be strengthened by God's Spirit in our inner being. For what purpose? This is a whole series of purpose phrases here in this prayer. That Christ, that Messiah, may live in your heart through faith. That you may be rooted and grounded in love. God is love. We are created to live in that love and to express that love in the world. And grounded in love, Paul says, this is his prayer, that you may, speaking to us, with all the saints. And when Paul uses the word saints, he's not talking about spiritual heroes in the ways come to be understood. He's talking about all of us. Anyone who's a follower of Jesus. That with all the saints, so it's communal, it's something that happens together. We might be empowered to grasp the height and the depth and the length and the breadth, and to know the love of Christ, which passes knowledge. Now, you just enter into territory here in which there are language that's self-canceling. We enter into a mystery that is so astonishing. And Paul, being a good Jewish theologian, understood this is how it had to be. Because God is mystery. God is infinite. So, stepping back for a moment, what is this about the height and the depth and length and the breadth stuff? What is that about? I don't know for sure, but this is how I think about it. I think about it like this. There was a time when, in the early Jesus communities, they thought that the height and length and breadth and depth of the community of Jesus was within the Messianic Jewish movement. They thought they knew where the boundaries were, right? The boundaries stopped, where Jewishness stopped. But then God tricked them and kept pushing the boundaries back further. And there was a lot of disequilibrium in the early church because they couldn't figure out, well, where exactly is the boundary? Where exactly is the height and depth and length and breadth of the love of Christ? Where does it stop? Who is excluded? And we continue to ask that same question today because that's what it means to grow in the love of Christ. We don't know where the edge is. Did you ever walk towards the horizon? Did you ever get there? No. That's what it means to be the church in the love of Christ. There is no limit. There is no height or depth or length or breadth. There is no boundary. You can't find it. The same is true for us inside ourselves. In those deepest, darkest places that are true about us, where we are the most ashamed, the most frightened to get close. Where we think surely God's not there. Yeah. Yes, the love of Christ is there. Nothing is left out. No one is left out. There is no end to exploring the edges of the love of Christ. Finally, Paul says, and this is the culmination of this whole series of phrases, that that you might be filled with all the fullness of God. What an astonishing vision for a human life. Did you hear that? That you might be filled with all the fullness of God? Is this guy nuts? Me? Must be talking. There must have been a pretty special group of people in Ephesus, because this doesn't sound like it fits someone like me. But I deeply believe it does. To be filled with all the fullness of God is actually God's purpose for us. So what does that mean? I don't know. It can't mean that I go into another zone of existence. It has to be something about my day-to-day life. So this is how I'm thinking about it right now. To be filled with all the fullness of God means, for me, to have a soft and open heart. To have a tender heart. To feel open and soft towards God, towards myself, towards all of you, towards, with God's grace, everyone I meet. To be free from judging and cruelty and unkindness. So that to be filled with all the fullness of God, in that place, the one thing I'm afraid of is doing harm, is hurting other human beings. That's how I'm thinking about what it means to be filled with all the fullness of God. So, what is the meaning of your existence? How does the love, the infinite love of Christ, find its reflection in your life? What do you do every day to get close to this truth? How do you find softening and opening and kindness? This is the vision I hope we all have of our lives. This possibility to live in love.